Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be taking a look at some famous bodybuilders who have retired to see what really happens to their physiques. I've always been intrigued by seeing these bodybuilders go from a point of absolute extreme to somewhat of a normalcy state in their physique, so I thought it would be cool to explore this idea a little bit. Now, this video won't be a serious critique on their physiques themselves, however, I will be analyzing the transformations that they made. Also, there are definitely a whole host of bodybuilders that won't necessarily be on this list, as this video comprises of the retired bodybuilders that fascinated me the most. Now, before the video does start, if you guys enjoy my content, liking and subscribing is always appreciated as it helps support the channel. With that all being said though, let's get into this video. Alright, starting off this video, I'll begin with a rather famous name from the 90s, that being Jurassic Paul, otherwise known as Paul Dillette. Back in his prime, this guy was an absolute freak and genetic phenom, insanely large structure, great full muscle bellies, and mass for days. Almost anyone would get dwarfed in sheer raw size next to him, even world-class competitors like Ronnie Coleman or Kevin Levrone. Now, the real knock on his physique was his lackluster back, which looked like an amateur's next to his massive arms and delts. Now, his posing was also awful, however, his amazing genetics carried him to multiple top 5 or higher placings at the Olympia. What is really amazing though is this guy's de-transformation from massive to regular. Looking at some of his pictures post-bodybuilding career, it is evident that he almost lost everything muscle-wise. Honestly, you never even guessed that he even worked out, let alone was a top-tier Olympian for many years based on these pictures. To be fair though, I'm pretty sure this, de-transformation was part of some sort of stunt or experiment, but nonetheless, the difference in the physique is pretty glaring. This is definitely one of the most dramatic de-transformations in which a competitor of such caliber loses almost all of their gains. However, the next one on this list is almost the opposite case. Jay Cutler is probably the most recent pro that I'm covering here, as another legend, Phil Heath, retired too early to be featured on this list. Or rather recently. Now, unlike Paul, Jay won the Olympia 4 times throughout his career, defeating the best bodybuilder of all time, Ronnie Coleman, in 2006. He retired in 2013 after placing a debatable 6th place at the Olympia, but unlike Paul, again, he, continued training and kept a really good physique. You can see that Jay really has a lot of his muscle shape and conditioning, and has continued to live a relatively active and healthy life. To be fair though, I think Jay might also be the youngest retired bodybuilder on this list, which does give him the advantage over the others. That being said, his physique is still amazing, and with some work, I think he could potentially compete at the Masters. Not that I really do think he should or even would consider doing it anyway. Alright, since we just spoke about Jay, I think it's only fair to look at the 8 times Mr. Olympia, Ronnie Coleman. He really needs no introduction. 8 Olympia wins, some of the freakiest genetics of all time, insane mass, and crazy condition. Ronnie's story is quite sad though, considering how dominant he was in his prime, as today he can barely walk and has certainly lost quite a bit of muscle. He's suffered tremendous amounts of physical pain and hardship, but despite this, he still continues to train in the gym and push extremely hard. To his credit, he still does have a lot of muscle, much more than the majority of people, much more than me included, and still looks to be retaining relatively low body fat numbers, which really goes to show you just how good his genetics really are. Speaking of genetics, Flex Wheeler is the next bodybuilder on this list. He retired in 2003 due to some health complications, and although I couldn't find any pictures, I assume he downsized due to this. That being said, he made a return to the Olympia stage in the Classic Physique division in 2017, presenting a relatively impressive, albeit smaller version of himself. Great lines, classic structure, and symmetry were all there, and he honestly looked great regardless of his placing. Of course, Flex used PEDs to make his comeback, which would turn out to have some negative effects on his health. He ended up having to have the lower portion of his leg amputated, and his health complications have only really been exacerbated by time. I honestly can't be certain that PEDs contributed to this, but regardless, Flex is still training and making the most out of his situation. As we're on the topic of comebacks, Kevin Levrone immediately came to my mind. Kevin is one of the most genetically gifted bodybuilders, as he was a supreme hyper-responder to PEDs and had some of the best shape and insertions imaginable. He also retired in 2003, however, to my knowledge, he did not sustain any serious life-threatening injuries. He downsized to a relatively normal muscular shape, opting to pursue other avenues in life. He then decided to make his comeback to the Open Olympia in 2016 with less than a year's worth of prep, and honestly, he looked great. He was in his 50s, way past his prime, and still had so much muscle and solid conditioning. Although he did not win, nor did anyone really think he would win, apart from a few people, I think. He did prove that he could make a comeback, much like Flex, and went out the way that he wanted to. Fast forward to now, Kevin does look downsized from his comeback shape, but still fit and muscular. He probably has one of the best physiques out there for his age, thanks to those incredible genetics and hard work. Alright, the last competitor that I'll be taking a look at is Dorian Yates. Now, he is definitely one of my favorite bodybuilders, and seeing him usher in the Mass Monster era is just something unforgettable. I feel like this is also a good place to mention Lee Haney, who's also in great shape for his age, as they competed against each other in the early 90s. Back to Dorian, he had one of the most massive, imposing, and extreme physiques out of anyone on this list. Muscle for days, unbeatable conditioning, and an all-or-nothing mentality to his training, which translated into the quality of his muscle. Because of his extreme ways of training, though, he would end up suffering many, body-altering tears and injuries that have left his physique with scars from his bodybuilding past. Nowadays, Dorian still carries a good amount of muscle, but focuses less on bodybuilding principles and more on overall longevity and health-centric activities. There really aren't many pictures of Dorian's back post-bodybuilding career, and I wonder if it still looks really great after all these years. Anyways, guys, that about does it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this more laid-back commentary style of video, as it always is fun for me to dive into a topic that's intriguing. Let me know down below if there are any other topics, similar to this one that you'd like me to cover, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.